Some places make no sense, and I don't mean metaphorically, I mean literally. They don't fit on maps, they don't follow the rules of geography, and when people visit them, they come back with stories that don't add up. Sometimes the instruments stop working, sometimes the air feels wrong, and in many cases the people who go there don't go back. In this video, we're not going to waste time explaining what cosmic horror is. That's been done 100 times already, and if you're here, you probably already know the basics. We're just going to look at some of the most deeply disturbing locations ever documented. Places so strange, so out of place, that even bringing them up makes people uncomfortable. Not because they're dramatic or flashy or obviously terrifying, but because they feel off in a way you can't quite name. Some of them are real. Others exist in reports, logs, journals, or stories that were never meant to be public. But all of them have one thing in common: they shouldn't be there. And the more you look into them, the more it feels like they were never supposed to be found. We're going to explore them one by one. And by the end, you might start to see the same pattern I did, that these aren't just locations, they're symptoms. Now, one quick warning, a few of these entries may include spoilers. I won't go into full plot summaries, but if you're the kind of person who wants to experience everything fresh, consider this your heads up. I take no responsibility for any long-term side effects, recurring dreams, or existential dread that might occur. You chose to click. Now, let's begin. It starts with a bird. A cuckoo chick pushes another hatchling out of a nest, not out of hatred or malice, just instinct. The mother bird, unaware, feeds the intruder as if it were her own. And that's all it takes, a simple, natural betrayal to open the film. Then we meet Gemma and Tom, a young couple, modest and ordinary. She's a kindergarten teacher, he's a gardener. They're looking for a house, maybe a life together, something stable, something real. They walk into a real estate office and meet Martin, a man who seems to be mimicking what a human should be. His smile is wrong, his movements are mechanical, his voice doesn't land where it should, but still, they agree to let him show them a place. He takes them to Yonder, a suburban housing development on the outskirts of the city. Every house is identical, every lawn perfectly cut. The sky above them is flat, soft, artificial. It's the kind of place that feels like it was designed by an algorithm, clean, safe, and deeply unnatural. Martin leads them into house number 9. He tells them it's the perfect place for a couple to raise a child, though neither of them said anything about wanting kids. He shows them the nursery, already painted, the champagne on the table, the pajamas waiting in the bedroom, and then, without a sound, Martin disappears. At first, they laugh it off. They try to leave, but every road leads back to the same house. Every turn brings them back to number 9. Hours pass, then a night. Then the realization, they are trapped, completely. There's no phone signal, no neighbors, no escape, just 2 people in a house. They sleep there for the night. In the morning, a cardboard box appears at the doorstep. Inside, food, no labels, no taste. Enough to survive, but not to live. Then the second box comes, this time with a baby inside, and a note, raise the child and be released. The child grows at an unnatural speed. Within weeks he speaks, within months he mimics them with eerie precision. He doesn't behave like a child. He copies, repeats, studies them like a mirror that learns. He screams when ignored. He imitates their arguments, their frustrations, their despair. Tom reacts by digging. It becomes his obsession. He picks a spot in the yard and starts excavating, convinced that beneath the surface there must be a way out, or at least a reason. Day after day, he digs deeper. His body deteriorates. He stops eating, he stops talking, but he keeps digging. Gemma, meanwhile, tries to care for the child. She feeds him, teaches him, watches him, but the more she tries, the more she sees that this thing isn't human. He brings home a strange book filled with symbols and diagrams no one could understand. He shows signs of awareness, not emotional, but structural, like he knows he's part of a system she can't see. The house never changes. The sky is always the same. The clouds don't move. The air doesn't shift. There are no animals, no insects, no seasons. Just silence. Eventually, Tom dies, worn out by the endless labor, by the meaninglessness of it all. The boy, now grown, hands Gemma a body bag. She places Tom inside and lowers him into the very hole he spent his final days digging. He literally dug his own grave. Gemma lashes out. She tries to hurt the boy, but he vanishes, sinking into the floor like it were water. She follows him, and what she finds is a nightmare made of layers. Other houses, other couples, other versions of the same prison, running parallel. She sees them all trapped, all performing the same loop, all part of something bigger. When she returns to her own reality, there's no more resistance left in her. The boy explains her role has ended. She was a mother. She fulfilled her function. Now she must be discarded. And even though she's still breathing, he seals her in a body bag and drops her into the hole beside Tom. The grass covers the grave instantly. No trace of them remains. This film presents a perfect closed loop. A neighborhood that copies itself endlessly. A house you can't leave. A child you didn't ask for. And a future that's already written. There's no villain here, no evil plan. Just a process. One that doesn't care if you suffer or understand. Because you're not meant to survive it. You're meant to complete it. The characters aren't being punished. They're not in hell. They're participants in a cycle that treats human life like software. Install it, run it, delete it. Tom and Gemma don't die because they failed. They die because they did what they were supposed to do. They raised the next replicant. They played their part in a reproduction mechanism that never asked for consent, never explained itself, and never had to. That's the core of the horror, not pain, not death, but function without meaning. Every attempt the couple makes to escape collapses back into repetition. Every day resets into the same sterile pattern. The sky never changes. The neighborhood is empty. Time doesn't move. It loops. The outside world doesn't exist. The phones don't connect. The sun might not even be real. That's what makes Vivarium so disturbing. It's not just that the characters are trapped. It's that they were always disposable. They are not individuals. They are stages in a reproduction cycle. Once their role is fulfilled, they're removed and overwritten. Not with malice, but with total indifference. The house, the child, the job, the rhythm, the happy ending, all of it is part of a machine that never stops. That doesn't care if you break down or scream or burn it to the ground, because it'll still be there, identical, untouched, waiting for the next pair. And that's the point. The true cosmic horror of Vivarium isn't that you're stuck in a trap. It's that you were born inside one, and no one is coming. There's no question. Coherence is my favorite horror film. No contest. I've seen it 8 or 9 times already. And every time, it leaves me with that same uncomfortable feeling. Like I've just glimpsed something I was never meant to see. And no, I'm not going to spoil it entirely, because this film doesn't rely on shocks or plot twists. It builds something slower, stranger, and far more lasting. A kind of creeping fracture that starts small and then spreads across everything you thought was real. It begins with a dinner. 8 people, old friends, reuniting for an evening that was supposed to be ordinary. There's wine, banter, unresolved tension between exes, talk of vacations, acting careers that didn't quite take off, and the usual cracks in adult relationships that people learn to ignore. But one of them, Emily, arrives already shaken. Her phone screen shattered mysteriously just after a dropped call with her boyfriend Kevin. He's traveling soon, maybe to Vietnam, and she's unsure about their future. It's a personal discomfort and she tries to brush it off. But that phone screen is just the first fracture. In the background, the news mentions it casually. A comet is passing by Earth tonight. It's rare, very rare. The last time something like this happened was nearly a century ago. But no one at the table really pays attention. Not yet. As dinner gets underway, conversation drifts to the comet again. One of them recalls an old case from the 1920s. A woman who swore her husband wasn't really her husband the night a similar comet passed overhead. She killed him. The police didn't arrest her, because the man she killed was her husband, and somehow he wasn't. It sounds like the kind of story people bring up half-jokingly over drinks. But in Coherence, stories like that are warning signs. And nobody listens to warning signs. Soon, the first real shift happens. The power goes out. All the lights die. The phones stop working. The internet is gone. But out there, maybe 2 blocks away, There's a single house that's still lit, just one, completely illuminated, in a sea of darkness. That's when the first question appears. Why that house? Two of the guests decide to investigate. They take glow sticks to tell themselves apart. Blue for them, red for whoever else might be out there. They say it'll only take 5 minutes. They just want to see if that house has a generator. But when they return, something's off. They bring back a box they claim to have found. Inside are photographs, photos of everyone at the table, taken that night. Some are numbered, no one remembers posing for them. No one knows what the numbers mean. And one of the guests has a cut that nobody remembers him getting, a small detail. But like everything in Coherence, small things spiral fast. From there, the logic begins to erode. Conversations seem to repeat themselves. People start to remember things differently. Questions multiply. Why are there 2 versions of a note someone wrote? Why does that other group, in the house they visited, seem to be them? And then comes the most terrifying realization. Maybe they never returned to their original house. Maybe they passed through something, a kind of invisible barrier, a quantum blur. And maybe each time someone goes outside, they come back slightly wrong. From that point on, Coherence becomes a slow collapse of everything that holds reality together. Identity, memory, causality. You're not watching a horror film with monsters or killers. You're watching something much worse. People losing their grip on what makes them real. And the most horrifying part? They all still look like themselves, but they're not sure who they are anymore, or if they ever were the version they thought. At the heart of Coherence is a horrifying thought. This house, and the infinite versions of it that now coexist, form a quantum maze. Each room, each dinner conversation, each encounter with a friend becomes a dice roll, a branching path. But unlike traditional horror, the threat here isn't a monster. It's possibility itself. As the characters cross invisible boundaries between realities, they begin to lose track not just of where they are, but which version of themselves they are. And slowly, it dawns on them, and on us, that the self is not fixed. Reality is not anchored. And the you that's reading this might not be the first one who tried. This is the essence of cosmic horror. Not that the universe is hostile, but that it is indifferent, chaotic, and far more complex than human minds were ever meant to handle. The house in Coherence becomes a kind of Schrödinger's box made real, not for cats, but for people. And every time the characters open a door, leave a note, step into the night, they may never return to the version of life they came from. Worse, they may not deserve to. And that's the final horror of places that shouldn't exist. They don't just trap you, they replace you. Because in a universe where every possible version of you exists, the one who survives isn't necessarily the original, just the one who got lucky, or unlucky enough to remember. Blackwood built something horrifying, and he didn't need blood to do it. Let me start by saying this. Algernon Blackwood is seriously underrated. If you're into cosmic horror, psychological horror, or anything that leaves you with that sick floating feeling that something is off with reality, this guy's essential. Lovecraft himself literally said, "The Willows was the finest supernatural tale ever written." And I get it. Because I've read The Willows multiple times, and every single time it gets under my skin in a different way. Quietly, without asking permission. The story begins on the water, the Danube River to be exact. 2 men, the unnamed narrator and his companion, a Scandinavian referred to simply as the Swede, are traveling by canoe down the more remote parts of the river, somewhere between Austria and Hungary. They've been journeying together for a while, and the narrator presents himself as someone comfortable with the wild, attuned to the rhythms of nature. But even he can feel that something is off as they move into this particular stretch of river. The landscape begins to change. The banks become lower, flatter, and less defined. The water grows faster. The skies stretch wider, emptier. And the willows, those are everywhere. The willows dominate everything. Entire islands of them, bent and leaning in unnatural ways, whispering and shivering in the wind, even when the air seems still. The narrator notes how strange it is that these trees, so soft and delicate in appearance, give off such a strong impression of unease. It's not their form, but the way they move, the way they almost seem to lean in closer when no one's watching. By the time they reach a small sand island to make camp, The narrator is already fighting a low-level dread he can't quite name. They land on this sandbar late in the day. The spot looks safe enough, dry, open, and bordered by a thick wall of willows. They set up their tent, unpack the gear, and try to relax. But something feels off. There are odd noises in the trees, strange echoes. The wind, at times, sounds like it's speaking, not in words, but in rhythm and intention. That night, as they sit by their fire, the narrator starts to notice changes in the sand. It's shifting, settling strangely, as if something beneath the surface is moving. He convinces himself it's just the water, the tide, the natural erosion of the island. But then they both begin to hear things. The Swede, who up until now has been a rock, rational, grounded, skeptical, begins to express concern. Not about wildlife, not about a storm. He says simply that they are not alone. And he doesn't mean people. The narrator asks him what he thinks is going on, but the Swede doesn't explain. He just says they've crossed into a place where the veil between realities is thinner than it should be, where things from another order of existence, things ancient and indifferent, can notice them. The narrator tries to rationalize it. He tries to sleep, but he wakes in the night to the sound of something brushing against the tent. Not walking, not growling, just brushing. He looks out and sees the trees moving in the moonlight, swaying violently, even though the wind is dead still. When he wakes again, the Swede is already up. Their paddle is missing. Their food supplies are not where they left them. And the trees, they seem closer. Not just taller, but physically closer, leaning in from angles that don't make sense. The men find circular marks in the sand, not footprints, not animal tracks, just wide, perfectly round impressions, like the print of a being without form or mass. They begin to argue, not with anger, but with fear, trying to make sense of something their minds are not equipped to understand. They speak less, they sleep in shifts. At one point, the Swede suggests leaving an offering, a gesture of appeasement, not because he believes in superstition, but because whatever's here seems to operate by rules older than language. The narrator goes along with it. They leave a piece of bread and a few items on the sand. The next morning, it's gone. From there, things escalate. The narrator begins to see vague forms in the willows at night. Not eyes, not faces, just presences, like folds in reality where something is watching but doesn't need to move. He writes in his journal but notices that the ink behaves strangely, pooling and drying unevenly, as if gravity is distorted. The Swede becomes increasingly paranoid. He talks about the concept of great ones, not gods, but beings from beyond the human frame of reference. Not good, not evil, just incompatible. And at no point are they physically attacked. No creature lunges at them. No entity emerges from the trees. The terror is the possibility. The looming awareness that they've been noticed by something too large to name. Something that doesn't care if they live or die. Because both outcomes are equally irrelevant. By the final night, the narrator feels the breakdown of his own identity. He can't trust his eyes. He can't even be sure the Swede is real. The willows are no longer just trees. They're extensions of the thing. Or maybe they are the thing. He can't tell where the landscape ends and the entity begins. And in one final, unspoken communion, the present seems to let them go. Not with kindness, but with disinterest. They were studied, like insects, and found unworthy of further curiosity. The next morning, the men pack up and leave in silence. Nothing chases them, nothing speaks. But they know that they didn't escape. They were released. And the river they now paddle on, the same river as before, will never feel the same again. The Willows isn't a ghost story. It's not about monsters or dreams or delusions. What Algernon Blackwood wrote is one of the clearest and most unsettling expressions of cosmic horror in literature. Annie did it before Lovecraft even defined the genre. The terror here doesn't come from what the characters see. It comes from where they are. A tiny, shifting island in the middle of the Danube, surrounded by unnatural willow trees that never stop rustling, even when there's no wind. The geography makes sense at first, then it doesn't. The land itself feels wrong, like a glitch in space that was never meant to be occupied. Blackwood never explains what lives there. That's the brilliance of it. There are presences, yes, but they're not ghosts, not creatures, not even spirits in the traditional sense. They behave more like ambient forces, as if the very fabric of that place is alive and aware. These aren't malevolent entities. They're not interested in hurting the characters. They don't care enough to be cruel. What makes them terrifying is exactly that: their indifference. The island reacts to human presence, but not in ways that make logical sense. It shifts. It bends time and perception. Objects vanish and return in impossible places. The character's sense of self starts to dissolve. It's like being exposed to a radiation of meaninglessness. And the more they try to understand it, the more the world around them seems to unravel, gently, persistently, without effort. Not because someone is attacking them, but because they've entered a place where the rules no longer apply. The horror builds not through jump scares or monsters, but through tiny things. Circular marks in the sand that weren't there before. Faint whispers with no source. Changes in memory and orientation that can't be explained. These aren't metaphors, they're evidence. Traces left behind by something else. Not a being, but a presence. Old, unbound by time, maybe even unaware of us in the way we understand awareness. What makes the Willows such a powerful example of cosmic horror is this. It suggests that the Earth itself may contain places where reality breaks down. Not in some dramatic, cinematic way, but quietly, subtly, in a way that only becomes clear once you're too far in. There are no monsters to fight. There's no truth to uncover. There's just the realization that you're standing somewhere you shouldn't be, and something is watching. Not with curiosity, not with hostility, but with total, unshakable indifference. And Blackwood understood all of this long before it had a name. We begin not with people, but with food. A lavish kitchen, almost surgical in its precision. Chefs in pristine uniforms move in silence, arranging dishes as if for royalty. Nothing is rushed. Every plate, every garnish, every wine pairing feels like it matters. But something's off. This isn't a banquet. It feels more like an offering. Then, cut, darkness, concrete, a cell. A man wakes up on a rough mattress. He's disoriented, confused. His name is Goreng. The walls are gray and stained. There's no door, no window, no clock. Just a giant square hole in the floor and another in the ceiling. On the wall, level 48. He's not alone. Across from him sits another man, older, with deep bags under his eyes and a stare that's somewhere between calm and broken. His name is Trimagasi, and he's already adjusted to this place. Goreng tries to speak to him, but the old man barely reacts. The only thing he says, almost bored, "We're in the hole." The hole, not a prison, not a rehab, not quite a game, just the hole, and soon enough, its nature becomes clear. From the ceiling, a platform descends, fast but controlled. It's a floating slab, loaded with food. Dozens of dishes, many untouched, but already half-eaten, broken, stepped on. The platform stops for a few minutes, and Trimagasi pounces. He eats like a man who hasn't seen food in days. Goreng doesn't touch anything. It disgusts him. Why would he eat food scavenged by who knows how many people? But here's the first lesson. There's no other food coming. The platform only comes down once a day. It starts at level 1, where everything is pristine, and stops for just a few minutes at each level on the way down. By the time it gets to 48, most of it has been destroyed, and below that, nothing. Goreng keeps trying to reason with Trimagasi. Where are they? How many levels are there? Is there a way to escape? Trimagasi shrugs off the questions. He's been through this before. The system, he says, isn't about answers. It's about acceptance. There are 3 kinds of people, he says, those above, those below, and those who fall. Over the next few days, Goreng begins to understand how brutal this system really is. People above you don't care. People below you don't matter. Speaking to them is pointless. Empathy is weakness. And every month, the level changes. One day you might be in the top 10, eating like a king. The next, you might wake up on level 132, with nothing but bone shards and empty plates. That randomness breaks people, makes them unpredictable, dangerous. Goreng, unlike Trimagasi, didn't come here as punishment. He volunteered. He wanted to quit smoking, read Don Quixote, and earn an accredited certificate in 6 months. That was the deal. He believed there was a logic to it, a structure, but the longer he stays, the less sense anything makes. One day, as the platform descends, a woman appears on it. She's silent, covered in cuts and bruises. She says nothing. Trimagasi explains that she comes down like that every month, always searching. For what? For her child, supposedly. But no one knows for sure. People attack her, abuse her, and yet somehow she survives, every month, every level. The atmosphere shifts. The hole is no longer just a prison. It begins to feel alive, like the building itself is watching, like the platform isn't just a mechanism, it's a test. And maybe there is no reward. By now, Goreng has seen enough to understand that survival here isn't about strength. It's about how far you're willing to go, and how much of yourself you're willing to lose in the process. But he's not ready to give up. He still believes something can be done, that the system can be changed, or at least shaken, that maybe, just maybe, there's a way to escape this vertical nightmare. What he doesn't know is how deep the hole truly goes, and what kind of people, or things, are waiting further down. The platform doesn't talk about monsters or curses. What it presents is far more unsettling, a sealed system with a design that defies logic, a mechanism that imposes absurd rules without explanation, punishes without intent, and watches without ever answering. It feels like a structure accidentally inserted into our universe, something that shouldn't be there, yet it is. And the most disturbing part? It works. Every day a platform descends, loaded with food. Every day people eat, or don't, depending on the level they woke up on that month. There are no visible supervisors, no instructions, just the pit, the platform, and the hunger. If someone dies, no one comes to take their place. If someone survives, there's no reward. The system keeps turning with the same indifference as the movement of planets. From the outside, it looks like a social metaphor. But once you're inside, all of that falls apart. Ideologies don't hold up down there. Only levels do. Only dissent. What leaves the deepest scar isn't the cannibalism or the desperation or even the violence between floors. It's the sense of being trapped in a structure that was never meant for human beings. A system that might look modern, might even seem rational, but actually follows principles entirely foreign to our experience. As if whoever created it wasn't cruel, just incompatible with human existence. Alright guys, that's where we'll wrap it up. The places we've talked about aren't just strange, they feel fundamentally wrong, like pieces of the world that were stitched in from somewhere else. They follow a different rhythm, speak a different logic, and for reasons we'll never fully grasp, they continue to exist. What makes them so disturbing isn't what they show you. It's the slow realization that your presence there means something's already gone wrong. These places don't chase you. They don't need to. They shift reality just enough to make you doubt your senses, your choices, your place in the world. This kind of horror lingers. It doesn't scream. It waits. It lives in that moment after the film ends, when the silence feels heavier than it should. If any of these places got under your skin, let me know which ones stuck with you, or which ones I should cover next. And remember, sometimes the most terrifying thing isn't what's in the dark. It's that the dark was never supposed to be there in the first place.